Hello, today I'm going to walk you through a project that was shipped recently for CareerMinder. The feature is called Reviews, and what it helps people do is prepare using their work experience that they've logged in CareerMinder, prepare for upcoming events in their career, like a job interview or an annual review with their boss or a performance review, things like that. CareerMinder has all of their work experience logged over time, and so figuring out ways to make that useful for people is an important thing to do. And it also gives people a reason to keep coming back to the product over time so that they can, it makes it useful not just for doing the occasional job search or things like that, but on an ongoing basis in their career. This is the dashboard as it existed before this feature. Up here at the top, we have an activity card that has kind of a numerical heads-up display of how much information they've put into the system. But it doesn't really tie into the idea of a path, which is your work experience, which is your work history, so your past, and your horizon, things you have coming up in the future. And so reviews is a good opportunity to revisit this. And so the first thing I designed in this feature was an updated dashboard. So up here we have a new upcoming card, which displays all your upcoming reviews. And then we have the path down below as we did before, but the horizon is much more of a real thing that is about your future. Because so if you have a job interview coming up or an annual review, that will show up in this upcoming card. And you can click on these and get right to the review. In addition, we needed to figure out how we would display reviews throughout the system. So for example, on the reviews page, what we have here is a basic listing of your reviews with your upcoming reviews and your past reviews. One thing when doing this is I had a few ideas of how we could show recurring reviews and distinguish them from things that happen just once. So I kind of had this stack idea, but for the sake of clarity and simplicity, went back to this icon to distinguish a recurring review from a regular review. The review creation process is we have this full screen modal that takes over, and you can click and you can fill out information using kind of helpful tips for like, is this a time-bound recurring review, or if this is an overall review. So this is something looking at my entire work history versus something that's looking at just the last 3 months or just the last year, basically is the difference there. And one of my favorite parts of this was actually the little illustrations down at the bottom. I love any opportunity to do a little illustration to just kind of elevate the visual design of an experience. This full screen modal thing, the idea here is that it gives you, it's only 2 or 3 steps, but it makes it so you can focus entirely on it and get through it as quickly as possible. And then once you've filled everything out, it would load the review. So this is one of the first designs of the review page where everything is kind of on the same page. We've got all the applicable experience for the time period here in this left column, and then we've got your average, basically the sentimentometer thing, like how did you feel about your work during that time period, and brag sheets and other things down in the sidebar. So this is all kind of on the same page. What of all this experience is most important? So I had the idea of maybe doing a smart sort where you can put in some amount of text, and then it would use AI embeddings to basically match your work experience to that text. So you could put in like a job description and you get all the most relevant experience for that job description. Or you could put in, like, if there's standard review questions that your employer has, you could put those in and you could get a list of the most relevant experience for those review questions. So the initial idea of the smart sort is that it would just highlight stuff, highlight certain ones and bring them to the top if they're the most relevant. And so this is a good initial idea, but partway through the process, it was too much. There was too many things on this page that are drawing your attention, and they're all, and they're related, but mostly just by the time period that you are looking at. So I went to a different direction and brought in the tabs that is used some other places throughout the app, where we really separate. So we can have the first tab is just about your experience in your review. The next tab is just about any brag sheets that you wrote during the time period. And the third one is about the trends, where we can provide you with some insight of your work over that time period. This trends tab was kind of an interesting thing. It opened up opportunities for a lot of things. So you can see a timeline of your sentiment over the time period, as well as your average. And also it gives you an opportunity on the trend to tie back your work experience to your goals. So you can see which work experience, like how much work have you been doing that's actually related to the goals that you've set for your career. One thing I realized is that, so for this tabs thing, not having a lot of experience sentiments in here is tricky. This graph will not be as useful, or your average sentiment won't be as useful if you're not actually logging your sentiment in there very often. And most of the time when you're looking at, when you have filled out a bunch of work experience, like for a resume or for here on this dashboard, you're talking about work that you did years ago, and you haven't entered any sentiment for that. So I wanted to create a quick way to enter sentiment in bulk, so that these trends reports could be more useful. So here on design this thing, so for any job that you've had, you can say, how did you like this job? And you could say, I always loved it. It was always kind of okay, or I always hated it. Or you can say, this started out great, it ended terrible. Or, and you can pick any one of these trend lines for that job. And what happens is when you click on one of these, it puts in sentiments for the time period of that job. One sentiment a week for the entire history, for the entire time period that you had that job, which then makes it so that when you're looking at a sentiment trend somewhere in the system, it's actually more useful to you. So that was kind of the design of this. Next, I went into and did the front end work to actually implement all this, and did back end work as well. And here we go. This is what it looks like in the real world. So we've got our demo account here, Henrietta, and she works in a magical wood shop, and in a kind of fantasy medieval setting, right? And so she's a baker and she's a woodworking apprentice, right? And so you can see here she doesn't have any sentiments put in there. So what we can do is we can look here and say, I think she probably, let's see, started out kind of slow, but just recently she's been really getting into it, right? So let's add those sentiments. There we go. Now we have 94 sentiments. All right, so now let's go in and create a review for Henrietta. This is going to be an annual review with her boss. All right, let's continue the details. Let's say she wants to do this on the 15th. This is a review for the 15th of December. And this is just about her woodworking work. Her boss isn't interested in her side gig as a baker. Call it an annual review, and let's automatically create recurring reviews. All right. So here she has her reviews. So this is all her work experience from the last year, which is the time period of this review. You can see her brag sheets and the trends over time. So you can see her sentiments are trending pretty well over time, and you can tell down here how much of the work experience in that time period is related to her different goals. Now, if we want to make this a little bit easier for her so she knows what to focus on going into her review, let's do this smart sort. So here we have some related content. What I'm pasting in here is the annual review questions that her boss will ask. And then we're going to select related experience. What this does is it goes through and it ranks all of her experience as from most relevant to least to those questions. So going into her review, if she reviews this experience, she should be more prepared for her conversation with her boss. So that is the reviews feature from beginning to end. It was a great project. I enjoyed doing the visual design, the illustrations, the user experience, and kind of picking which flow would be best from the creation of it to the displaying of the review, what would be most comprehensible to the end user. And the implementation was a lot of fun too. So that's Career Minder Reviews.